They keep the insects away. Do they make the tree more or less flammable? I've heard both things, so I want to.
I heard less. Yeah.
So
I don't think it has any effect.
it is fire retardant, or so it burns it. So it chars more quickly. Tannins char more quickly, but in that charring, lock away carbon from being combustible, so they don't fully combust. That's what the tannins do, is they keep full combustion away by quickly combusting some parts of the molecule, but not fully combusting it all. So not releasing all of those bonds and all of that energy in the fire. So it burns fast, but at a lower temperature.
So wood without bark will burn faster.
Yes. Fewer tannins
That
in
figures why you can't start a campfire with wood.
there. Yeah.
You try.
And so does that make sense? It burns and fully consumes, but, it burns but does not fully consume. That's what I mean to say. It does not fully burn every single carbon bond. It quickly chars to form this carbon network.
It'll smolder.
Yes,
It just won't.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so slower combustion, but it does combust every bit of the surface, but slower combustion, so it's a little bit cooler and doesn't burn in there
And
as
what about the needles?
There are tannins in the needles.
So would they ignite or just sort of char?
I found that one of the best thing I have to show this is I was in Los Gatos during the CZU, or I went on a hike there and found a redwood branch, like a set of needles, all black over there, but still structurally sound. And so the idea is char really quickly, but don't fully combust. It wasn't white ash, it was a black leaf that somehow through the heat of the fire got lit and lifted from here. We were 20 miles away as the crow flies from this fire, but this thing lifted and was found out there. And so that's the idea, is char, but don't fully combust into ash. Don't burn all of the carbon. Right? So it sort of is both. Tannins make it easier and harder for it to burn. Easier in the sense that it burns a lot of the surface area, but harder because it burns slower and doesn't break apart every single carbon bond, releasing all of the energy all at once. So slow smolder, not hot burn. And this is also why when a fire gets in the trunk, that will burn hotter, and that has a bigger risk of, like, the chimney tree died because fire gets in that trunk and the wood is going to burn a lot harder.
That's a chimney tree right there.
It is. And see how its recovery is, I mean, it's not bad.
Yeah. I wondered, because since we're talking about those dormant buds being so far in, if it's burned all of its heartwood, what's happened to those buds?
They originate far in, but then they sort of, I guess we're in Santa Cruz. So like a surfboard, the buds ride the cambium just above. As the outer part of the trunk grows outward, the buds are surfing the top of that.
Oh, that's why we see those streaks.
But chilling under this bark.
Okay.
Right? Now, what puts out, why do they become chimney trees and not fully combust? Does anyone know?
Because once there's finally a crack where the fire can get into the heartwood will burn, but the live part of the tree is...
What about the sapwood?
It's full of
It's
water.
wet, presumably, right? And so if there's a big, thick, inch thick or more layer of sapwood, that's just full of a bunch of water, and it's mostly dead cells.
That's not where the phloem and the xylem are?
No, sapwood is xylem. Sapwood is xylem.
Okay.
All wood is xylem, but sapwood are the water pipes.
And they're right at the edge of where the new bark is growing and
Yes.
where the old
And so
bark has...
the water-filled cells cause the fire to smolder from the inside from a chimney tree.
Interesting.
So smolder from the outside from tannins, smolder from the inside because it gets into wetter and wetter and wetter wood until it reaches the sapwood, which is that hydraulically flowing part of the tree. And the reason chimney trees sprout poorer than others is because we talked about how old are those sugars in the buds, that most recent paper? Decades, many, many decades old. The sugars get stored in the sapwood, but also in parts of the heartwood as well. And so if you burn all of the heartwood to make a chimney tree and it smolders
Right.
once it hits the sapwood, you've burned some of that stored sugar that could have been used to make new branches. So it's just slower recovery.
It got caramelized.